So today we're going to talk about social media, which, as everybody knows, is so prominent right now. It used to be that you just worked on your own website, or you might do a blog or something. But now with social media, it's everywhere. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is yet to be determined. Having kids who live on social media, it's a really interesting dynamic. We didn't grow up with it. It's a very instantaneous thing now, so that people expect when I'm traveling that I'm going to post something immediately. And it's a great thing to do, and I'm going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of social media in general, the do's and don'ts, and each of the specific platforms, the advantages and disadvantages of those, as well as some of the tools that I use to try to promote and make it easy. So that's kind of the goal here. I want to start by saying that this is sponsored by Bayphoto, if it wasn't for them, I would not be here today. So for those of you who use Bayphoto for your printing, and I do for all of my printing, or all of our albums, books, and metal prints, and all that stuff that we do for my photo business is done through Bayphoto. So thank you to them for sponsoring this presentation. And we'll talk a little bit about that coming up in a little bit. But so first of all, why is social media important? I think it's important for business. As a photographer, I think it's important that you're relevant and that you're out there and that you're showing your work. And I watch Shark Tank with my kids, and we like to look up the products that are on that show and see how they're doing. And one of the comments a lot of times that are out there on the internet is, this product doesn't seem to be doing that well. They haven't updated their Facebook in 2 years. Or they haven't tweeted anything in a year. It's all about social media. And so if you want people to know that you're out there and you're still doing work, it's a good idea for business to have social media. Now, with that said, do you have to have every social media site and to post to all of them? Maybe not, and I'll talk about that as well as we go forward. But it is good to be out there and make sure that you have content that's interesting to people and relevant. Sharing your work. I love photography, as you all know. I have a huge passion for it. I want to share it. So it might be something as simple as last night when I landed at Newark Airport and it was a sunset and I just took a picture with my iPhone and posted it. But usually it's things like when I'm traveling. I was just in Costa Rica last month because we're doing workshops there, and got some really cool shots that I posted, and that's really fun to get a great shot that was unexpected maybe and get that and post it to social media. For marketing, and one of the areas that I've said this many times here at B&H, as photographers, and I know many people who are great photographers, they're just not good marketing people or not good business people. So it's really important to market yourself and to show people your work. Believe it or not, I've actually gotten clients from people who looked at my Instagram account and said, hey, I see that you posted a lot of images of bar and bat mitzvahs. My daughter's having her bat mitzvah and she likes your work. This is a 12-year-old telling her mom to contact me. But it works. So it's good to be out there. So it even helps my sales. But the other thing is it's fun. It is a way to share your images and your thoughts with the world, which still to this day freaks me out when Deborah was just saying to everybody who's watching live that there's people all over the world. It's really crazy to me that I'll go on Facebook Live and I'll do a video and I'll have comments from Prague and South America and Australia, New Zealand, and it's pretty gratifying to see that so many people want to see or hear me, which still kind of confuses me, but it's really incredible, because if you think about it, 10 years ago, you couldn't do that easily unless you're on broadcast television or something. So it's fun. I really enjoy it. So here's the big challenges with the social media sites. Which ones do you use? I don't use all of them, because part of the problem is the next point, which is time. It takes time to post to each of these, and some people want to post different things to different sites. I tend to post the same content to all of them, and I use a tool to do that, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But it's a conscious decision. So for instance, I used Facebook quite a bit. And my daughter kept saying to me, Dad, you should be on Instagram. Now, this was a couple years ago. And I'm like, I have too many social media sites. I don't want to do another one. Well, that was a mistake. I should listen to my daughter at the time. And so I've been on Instagram maybe for the last year and a half or so. But it was worthwhile, and it was a decision that I made to do it. And I'm still not using Snapchat and others. So I'm still deciding on which ones I'm going to use and not use. And part of it is the relevancy. So different social media sites will have different kind of focuses. And so you want to make sure that you're posting the right content to the right site. And I'm going to go through all of them in detail here as we go forward. Some are more image-based, some are more text-based, and some are a combination of both. So you want to, again, know which ones you're posting to and have the right kind of content for it. Building a following is tough. It used to be a lot easier to build a following. It used to be that if you were on Facebook and you had 5,000 followers, 5,000 people would see your post. That's not true anymore. Because of their algorithm, I can say that, they make it very difficult. And so you might post something, and even though I've got 50,000 followers, only 2,000 might see it, unless you pay, which I don't want to pay for it. I use it as a kind of a viral marketing. I don't really want to pay for it, although I've never done it yet. I shouldn't say never, but I probably won't. So building a following is tough. You have to have good information that people want to share and want to interact with you. The other challenge of social media is frequency of posting. And you guys, if you're on social media, you probably know that there are people, some friends of yours, who post too much. And there are other people that might post like once every month or two. So there's a happy medium to how often you post. I personally try not to post more than once a day or twice a day at the most. And one of the reasons is I don't want to be that guy that's got 15 posts in one day and driving people crazy, because that generally will says people like, if they look on their feed and they see Jeff Cable, they're gonna be like, oh, that's ridiculous, and they'll say, okay, I want to unfollow this person. So you want to be careful to have that happy medium. And that's a dance. That's a tough one. There are times when I've been at some event where something interesting is happening, and I might post 5 or 6 times in one day. But then if I look at my analytics, I'll see a lot of people unfollowed because they didn't like it. This is a lot of text on one slide, but this is kind of my best practices for social media. Only put good photos. As a photographer, only put good photos. Now, if you're not a photographer and you're watching this, that's fine. And a lot of people are posting stuff to social media, and it may not be a great photo. That's fine. But as a photographer, I want to post good stuff. Again, last night I posted a picture from the airplane window of the sunset. It was not my best shot. It was more of just the relevancy, and it was fine. But I try to post only my stuff I'm proud of that I want people to see. We talked about don't post too often. Again, a rule that I try to follow. The other thing is you have to think about the size and cropping for each site. So this gets tricky. Every social media site has different formats for how they show the images. So if you look at Instagram, it tends to be more of a square, and yes, you can do some things that are off size, there's not square, more rectangular, but there's limits. If you try to put a portrait image in, it will crop the top and bottom. So as you're posting images, you need to think about that. A lot of times I'll have an image that I can use in standard format, standard like 4x6 type format for most social media, and I have to recrop it and put my watermark in a different place for Instagram. Don't overuse hashtags. So hashtags are more used in things like Twitter and Instagram. And in Instagram, you hashtag, so for instance, if I post a picture of a hawk from Costa Rica, and I can have a hashtag for hawk, Costa Rica, Osa Peninsula, rainforest, nature, wildlife, and then I can go crazy. There's probably like 500 other hashtags you could put. But people really don't want to look at your post and see 500 hashtags. The advantage of using a hashtag is that if I put wildlife and then someone wants to go look at wildlife, they might see my picture and then become a follower. So that's one of the reasons to have it. Or in my case, I'll tag Canon, Black Rapid, if I'm using their strap, Think Tank, if I'm using their bag, Bay Photo, if I'm going to print it later on their stuff. And so I'll put some sponsors, links in there, Tiffin, if I'm using their filters. So there's advantages to using them, but again, you have to be careful not to overuse them. The next one's tough, especially right now. Stay neutral. And when I say stay neutral, this is my rule, and I have or not. I don't put information about politics, or I don't really talk about religion. I don't talk about race. Because honestly, that's not who I want to be. I don't want to be that guy that's out there and making political statements. Now, there are plenty of people right now who are doing that. I've got relatives who do that. It really bothers me because to me, and this is my own belief only, I don't believe that belongs, at least for me, I don't want it on social media. If I want to talk to my friends about it or my family, that's one thing, but broadcasting my opinions, I don't want to offend anybody, and inevitably I would. Now, I have in there or not. There are some people who thrive on riling people up, and there's some people who want to live on the edge. Other photographers that do that, and they love it. I mean, Jared from Fro Knows Photo, Jared loves it. He likes to get people fired up. That's not who I am. So we're just a different philosophy. Get permission to use photos of other people. So in my contract, when I'm shooting for clients, I have in there, I can use the images from your event for my own marketing. Even with that said, and it's in the contract, I generally will email the family and say, I love this picture. I just posted a picture 2 days ago. I shot a bat mitzvah, and the oldest daughter plays water polo, and the day of the mitzvah got her eye cut open. She had 7 stitches. Mom sends me an email about an hour before I was leaving and saying, can you fix that in Photoshop? I'm like, yeah, no problem, we can do that. So it was a really funny shot where we were doing the family portrait, and I had them all look at her like, really? And it was a really funny shot, and I posted it. But even though it was in the contract that I could, I still emailed the family first and said, are you okay with me posting this image? The other thing I'll do when I post the images, I change the file name. So if it has, underscore cable family photo, I'll take all that out. So in case the file name does remain in one of the social media sites, no one sees last names. I want to protect their identity unless they don't care, in which case I'll tag them, their family name in the photo. Most of the time I don't. I just say, here's a funny photo from an event I just did this weekend. Watermarking your images, and we're going to talk about ownership of images for social media in a little bit, but I always, or I shouldn't say always, almost always watermark my images. So the one I did yesterday from the airplane, from the phone, I didn't watermark it because it went straight from my phone. But if I'm shooting a good high quality image with my Canon cameras and I'm posting it, it will be watermarked. And the reason I do that is, one, I want it to be watermarked with my brand, but the other thing is I don't want someone to use it for any other commercial use if that were to happen. If someone were to remove my watermark, then it's illegal, right? So it's there for a good reason. Whereas if I don't watermark it, and if a social media site says, well, we can use it because you posted it to our page, then that's a problem. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on that when we get to the Facebook part. Sharing between your social media sites and website. A lot of people don't do this, but from your social media, you should have your website. From your website, you should have your social media. So on jeffcable.com, it shows Instagram and Facebook, Jeff Cable Photography. Twitter, I forget what my Twitter handle is, YouTube, and so forth, and those are all linked. So people can go from my webpage to social media and back as well. I do reply to messages quickly. Again, as photographers who are teaching, like I am, I get a lot of messages, and I try to get to them every couple of days, but I always answer them within usually 3 days. And I tell people I answer every email and every message. There's sometimes when I'm traveling, when we go to Tanzania or some of the other areas in Africa, the internet's not very good, and sometimes there's a delay. But for the most part, I like to get back to people quickly. A lot of the social media sites, including Facebook, will say this person gets back to people within a day. I want it to stay that way. Sometimes it's difficult depending on if I write a blog that's a lot of people are interested in, they got tons of feedback, it gets a little hard. But that's kind of my rule of thumb. I have this last part in there, and this doesn't pertain to everybody, but as a photographer, I like to share my settings. So a lot of times when I post to social media, I'll put Canon 1DX Mark II, 70-200-2.8 at 5.6, ISO 160, 1/250th of a second. Using this flash or 2 flashes, and this is my settings on the flash. That again is a personal preference. Some photographers don't want to share how they did it. I actually like to share how I did it. So I don't mind it. I think part of photography is sharing that passion. So that's kind of what I do. So here's the different sites. You've got a lot. You've got Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Snapchat, Google+, Pinterest, and then blogging. And this isn't all of them, but this is the main ones. And so I want to go through each of these and kind of talk about them individually. Instagram. And Instagram to me is very, very relevant right now. For one, it's mobile centric. It's interesting to look at statistics of who is looking at my social media. And predominantly, it's on mobile devices. So having something mobile friendly or mobile centric is important. It's very photo centric, so it's not really meant to put a whole long amount of text in there and make a political statement or whatever you want to do. It's really about, hey, here's my photo. It is a younger demographic. As I mentioned, my daughter is the one who encouraged me to get on Instagram. And it's a great place. They do have something called stories. I've never actually done them yet, but you can actually go up there and you can put videos or what's called a story so that it shows up in the top panel for people. And you can now do live videos, which they didn't used to have. It used to be, it was just square photos. Then they started getting away from that, and now they have video as well. But Instagram, of all of them, is probably one of the more important ones, I think, today. So Jeff Cable Photography on Instagram, and I've got about 11,000 followers now. Again, started that late in the game, which is one of the challenges. If you wait a couple of years and you don't get in at the beginning, it takes a while to build that following back. Facebook is still very, very relevant, great for photos and text. So unlike Instagram, where it's really more for photos, Facebook, of course, you can put a lot more text in there. And so a lot of times I will put more setting information or more background information on Facebook than I will on Instagram. Slightly older demographic, if you talk to a lot of kids today, they're, nah, I'm not going to use Facebook because all you adults are on it, which is kind of funny. But because a lot of my clients are adults, I'm okay with that. So again, depending on what you're shooting and who you're shooting for, it's still a very, very good place to be. Again, I don't pay at all to promote any of my stuff on Facebook at this point. It's all free. This is that image that I was talking about of the family with the girl that cut her eye open. It was pretty funny. And it's really interesting, by the way, to look at the analytics, which I'll talk about in a second, the insights. I'm going to talk about that. There are two different kinds of Facebook pages. There is pages and a personal page. And a lot of people don't get this. A regular Facebook personal page is, like I have one, it's just Jeff Cable. I don't use it that often, and when I do, it's really just for my own family and very close friends. Like I said, I rarely use it because I usually post everything publicly to my page, which is Jeff Cable Photography. And what happens is I get a lot of people who invite me and want to become a friend on Facebook, which is great, but I have a canned message, I copy and paste them. It says, please like Jeff Cable Photography, not Jeff Cable, my own personal page, because that one's reserved for friends and family, and again, not used much. So I try to push them to the business page of Facebook. So if you're a photographer, you really want to set up a business page, not a personal page. The other thing is I believe personal pages are limited to 5,000 people. They used to be, I don't know if they still are, but Facebook pages, the business pages, you can have as many as you want. Right now, I think about 49,500. And you can do live videos. And I actually really enjoy doing that. I don't have a whole lot of time, and unfortunately sometimes a month will go by and I don't have a time to do it. But it's really cool because you can just go live right from the computer or from your phone, and I'll say like, hey, here I am today, I'm at the Olympics, and here's what I'm doing, and I'll give a little bit of history, or I may, when I set up a studio at my house, I'll walk around and go, okay, here's my light setup that I'm doing, and I'll talk about the ratios and everything else, what backdrops I'm using or whatever. So they're very, very cool. One caveat I should add when I just mentioned the Olympics, I'm actually not allowed to do a Facebook Live broadcast from anywhere within the Olympic Park because that's a live broadcast from the Olympics, which is reserved for NBC. So generally, whenever I'm at the Olympics, I'll do it outside the park or wherever else I can get a good internet connection. I talked about insights. The insights for Facebook are really cool. You can actually click on the Insights tab, and it will give you analytics on how you're doing. And this is really, really interesting because you can look at your traffic and you can look at how many people are liking your stuff and you can look at how many people are unliking your page. And so you can look and say what's popular, what's not popular. So like as I mentioned, if I post 6 times in one day, I might see that, I had 12 people who unfollowed me. And you can look at that. The other thing that's really kind of scary, and this goes back to the next point, which is their algorithm. Facebook has an algorithm that determines how many of the people will actually see your posts. So in the example of the picture here of the family that I posted, it did really well. I probably got seen by 3,000 people. Of my 50,000, 3,000 saw it. The other 47,000 did not, because Facebook decides kind of who's going to see it and who's not. If you guys are going to Jeff Cable Photography all the time on Facebook, you're more likely to see it than if you only look at the page once every month or two. The other thing is, if you put a URL into that, if I say, for instance, the post below it is I wrote a blog about Costa Rica, and I said, hey, check out the blog, and I put a URL. Guess what? The engagement only went to about 600 people. Why is that? The reason is because there's a URL in there, and Facebook doesn't want anybody drawing people away from Facebook. So by putting a web link to say, go off to my blog, Facebook's like, yeah, we're not going to show that to too many people. So I'm actually, right now, in building this presentation and really looking at the analytics, thinking, maybe I won't put that anymore. Maybe I'll just say, check out the Jeff Cable blog, and I won't put a URL at all. But it is frustrating, though, because I will tell you that in the old days of using Facebook 5, 6, 7 years ago, if I posted something, people would see it. Now it's a challenge. So think about that when you're doing your posts. You probably don't use web links. The other thing is certain things do better than others. We're going to talk about that in another slide, certain images. The other thing is there's a broad use license. Somebody sent me an email and they said, hey, I see that you're doing a social media presentation at B&H. Can you tell us, is it true that they own the photos? That Facebook owns your photos if you post them to Facebook. So Facebook does not own your photos, but they have a very broad license on how they can use them. So they don't have ownership, but they might be able to use them in their marketing or other things. So again, good reason to watermark your images with your logo. Okay. Twitter. So Twitter's an interesting one. I, for a long time, avoided Twitter just because, I don't know, I just did. I still am not hugely active on it. It's only just generally the same posts that you see on Facebook or Instagram. It is limited to 140 characters. That's kind of what Twitter's all about. I find that kind of limiting, especially as a photographer who's trying to put settings into the photo, like what camera I use, what lens. There's not enough room for that. So when I post, I have to think about that specifically for Twitter. The posts on Instagram, or sorry, on Twitter, live and die very quickly. So if you look at your Twitter feed, if you're following a lot of people, it's just all chronological. So if I post something 10 minutes ago, it could be buried already because there's so many other posts coming in Twitter. Which is going back for a second to Instagram and Facebook. Originally, Instagram and Facebook were all chronological. Now they're not. Now their algorithm determines what they're going to show, when they're going to show it. I loved Instagram when it was chronological, and I was really vocal about the fact that when they changed it, it really frustrated me. Twitter's still chronological, but there's so many tweets happening that you just get pushed out to the bottom. This one here I put in just because I thought it'd be fun. Don't post at 2 a.m. like some other people. Be careful what you post to social media. Mr. Trump. Okay. LinkedIn. I did say that, didn't I? Yeah. I'm not making a statement, I'm just saying. Okay, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a networking site. So unlike the others, which tend to be more casual, consumer, kind of what's out there, LinkedIn is a networking site more for business purposes. I actually do post all my posts to LinkedIn like I do to the others because photography is my business. So I feel like I can get away with that. I've had some people write to me and say, well, that photo of that bird doesn't really belong on LinkedIn. You know what? Then don't look at it. Scroll down. But I use it that way. It is more professional. A lot of people use it for job hunting and stuff like that. But it is a business social media site. I do use it. It's more designed for text and stories and articles than it is for photos. But again, it's part of my business, so I use it that way. It is great for corporate work, by the way. If you do professional headshots, corporate events, like I do a lot of those. I'll be doing those all next week. It's a good thing because if people see that you do headshots in the business world, that's not a bad thing. So you can use it. Again, think about the relevancy of what you're posting to different sites. YouTube. YouTube, again, is all video content. I use it, my YouTube page, mainly for drone videos, because I don't shoot tons of video with my Canon cameras. So I use it more for drone, for teaching, and for travel. So if I did a post on back button focusing on my camera, how to set up back button focusing on a Canon camera. And I just did that, like, hey, I'm going to show people how to do this. I think it's had like over 100,000 views. And so periodically, I'll do a YouTube video of again, a home studio setup or anything that I think is relevant. I want to do more of them. They're just so time-consuming to do. But I'm hoping to get more of them on YouTube. These videos that we do for B&H go on their YouTube page and are hugely effective because they have the reach to reach people all over the world. So, in effective, for me to be able to teach here and to be able to share that passion with so many people is a way that I would never have personally because they have that huge following. Travel, I do travel a lot. I am leading tours. For those that are here, we handed out cards. At the end of the presentation, I've got a slide that shows all the tours that are coming up. You can also go to my website, just jeffcable.com, go to workshops. But just got back from Costa Rica. We're leading a tour there in November as well. And I like to shoot videos there. I shot videos in Africa of the reverse migration when we were there on the last trip last January. And it's really fun because video does add a different component than a still photo, especially when you're seeing giraffes going by and elephants coming at you or whatever. It's cool to shoot both. So that's kind of the rare for me, but I do it. It is by far the most popular site for video, and a good thing if you're into video content. And you can earn money. I actually don't have that turned on right now, but I know people who turn on the advertising. We get a little banner at the bottom or an ad that pops up before the video, and they can make reasonable amount of money. I'm not doing that. Not yet. I don't know if I will. We'll see. Oh, I had to put this in last night. So, Snapchat. I'm not on Snapchat. Well, I am. I'm on it. My daughter installed it on my phone, or I did, but I don't use it much at all. It's really a weird social media site for me. I know the kids love it, but things disappear quickly. And to me, when content gets posted and disappears within 15 seconds, my first question is, what the heck are you posting on there that you want it to go away like that? And so I don't get it. But the kids love it and live on it. So again, it's a conscious decision for me not wanting to be on it. I've shared some posts with my daughter a couple times, and that's fine. I decided to put this picture there because it's a fun interface where you can put dog ears on yourself and all these funny things, which I think is very clever. The young kids think that's really fun. I find the user interface horrible. Like, I cannot figure out where you swipe sideways, up, down. I hate it. Again, that's just me. So, and there's a bunch of younger people in there going, loser. Okay. Google Plus. I put mostly dead on here, and I apologize to my friends at Google, who are my clients. But I mean, Google Plus came out, and Google said, hey, we're going to be the next Facebook. And it really hasn't happened. It's not very used. The engagement levels are really low. It is a great interface, and it's very photocentric, so it's really nice, big photos on the page. So it has its merits. It just doesn't have the following. So again, if you take the time to post to it, and if it's a pain to have to post to one more thing, do you do it? Well, I still do it because I use a tool to do it, and I'll show you that in a minute. But it's still out there. It's worth mentioning. Again, it would not be my number one site to hit. Pinterest. Pinterest is predominantly a female demographic, and it is great for generating ideas. We use Pinterest a lot with when we do weddings, senior portraits, family portraits, and we'll tell clients, my wife will handle this side of that, and she'll say, can you send me a Pinterest board of all your favorite wedding shots so we see what you like? Or senior portraits, kids will go out there and find pictures that they like, certain styles, or in front of a rustic wood, or graffiti, or whatever they like, and send it to us so we can see kind of what they're thinking and what kind of attitude they want in those photos. I don't use it a ton. I use it a little bit, but the cool thing is, again, your clients can use it and get the information to you. So again, my wife tends to handle more of that than I do. Because when we do weddings, she assists me. Okay, blogging. This is one I use all the time. I blog every week, pretty much, and I really like blogging. I'm going to tell you the advantages and the disadvantages of it. The first one is the most important one to me. You have complete control of your blog. So here's the thing. I put in here, think of MySpace. If I stood here 6 years ago and said to you, you got to be on MySpace, right? That might have been relevant 6 years ago. If I tell you that today, everybody would laugh because MySpace is gone. Well, who's to say that 3 or 4 of those sites I just told you about today, if we watch this in 4 or 5 years from now, we wouldn't laugh. Because these things change so fast. Technology changes so fast. So one of the advantages to me is if I write a blog, it's my blog, and I can do what the heck I want with it. So, and when people subscribe to the blog, so they can go to the top corner of my blog and they put their email address in there, and then it just emails my blog to them whenever I post one. But what's nice is I also have their email address. If I do want to tell people about workshops, I can do an email blast. I don't do it very often. I did one this year. But at least I have control to tell people, hey, I've got something to tell you if you want to know about this. Unlimited text and images. I'm not limited to 140 characters or even 14,000 characters. I can write whatever I want as long as I want. I generally don't try to do long ones because all of us live in this society today where if it takes more than 3 minutes to read it, we won't. So I try to keep them kind of as short as I can. Some get longer than others. This is the latest one, which is, again, from Costa Rica. And I try to blog, like, here's what we did for these 2 days. Here's what we did for these 2 days. But I love having control of that. I can format it the way I want it formatted. It used to be black with white text. I had tons of people saying to me, it's too hard to read. Fine, I'll change it. I can make the pictures bigger, smaller. I can do whatever I want. It's my blog. And I can say and show what I want, which is also important. Again, going back, I wrote an article about Lexar when they initially said that they were getting rid of Lexar, and to me that was a travesty, and I wrote an article about it saying, I don't know what's going to happen with the company. They've been recently purchased by another company. I will write another blog if and when I know the reality of what that means to everybody. But at least I have the ability to say what I want on there. You can advertise if you want. I don't advertise on my blog. I don't want it to look like a race car with logos everywhere. So I do have a lot of companies that come to me or email me and say we'd like to advertise on it, and I don't. I do have links to B&H, and that's an affiliate link. So I always encourage people to use those if they're going to buy stuff here, but that's it. But again, it's my blog. I own it. Disadvantages of a blog. It takes a lot of time. So as opposed to writing 140 characters, if I'm writing an entire blog, sometimes they take 3 or 4 hours to write, which is fine if I've got the time, but time is always short. And at the Olympics, I always blog every day from the Olympics of what I shot and how I shot it. So I can't take 3 or 4 hours to write that blog. It's got to be like an hour and a half or less. But still, an hour and a half at the Olympics is like an eternity. So it's a challenge. You got to be consistent. You can't blog once every 6 months. That does not work. You have to blog once or twice a week. A lot of people say twice a week. When I wrote this and showed this slide to my wife, she just shook her head like, I hate people that blog more than once a week. So I typically am once a week just because of time. But I really hate missing and going 2 or 3 weeks without blogging. It rarely ever happens, but it really bothers me. I like to keep it and keep content out there. But you gotta be relevant. I can't just blog because I want to blog once a week. It's gotta make sense to the people who are reading my blog. If people are into photography or sports or whatever they're into, I want to be able to relate to them, and I don't want to like put stuff that they don't care about. It's kind of interesting because I shoot so much. I shoot bar and bat mitzvahs, I shoot weddings, portraits, the Olympics. And so I'm always worried, like, if I post a bunch of bar mitzvah shots, what are the people who like sports? Are they going to just think, like, this guy's crazy, I don't want to read him anymore? Or vice versa. So it's a balancing act for me on what I'm posting. Actually, about 2 months ago, I did a blog, and the blog was, what do you want to see on the blog? And I had hundreds of people email me and tell me what they want to see. So now I have this great list to work from with ideas. So, which leads to the last point, which is you have to have content. So if I say to you, you should be blogging once a week, well, if you haven't taken photos in 6 months, what are you going to talk about? What are you going to show? So for me, I shoot a lot, so it's good, and it gives me a lot to blog about. When I come back from Africa, I usually have about 5 blogs or 6 blogs worth of content because we're shooting there for 10 days. So content is a challenge at times. One of the things with blogging is I like to watch what works and what doesn't work. Again, going back to when we talked about Facebook and analytics and looking at what works, one of the cool things, I use Blogger. That's it's a free service from Google, and I can look at my stats. I can look at spikes where every Olympics it goes up to 400,000 people or 300,000 people. On a typical month, it'll be about 70,000 readers. And so I can look at that. I can see how many people are on per day, how many people are on yesterday. I can also look at the most common and the most popular post that I ever did, which surprisingly, I wrote a post about don't delete images on your memory cards in your camera. It's a really bad idea. I spent 12 years as director of marketing at Lexar. I left Lexar about 1.5 years ago. So I'm like, okay, I can write this as me, not as a representative of the company. And I said, don't delete images on your card because you can corrupt images, everything else on the card. So I wrote this and I said to my wife, I think this will do well. And she's like, nah, it's kind of boring. 350,000 people have read that one blog. Who knew? So I watched it though. Okay, so people want to know more about the technical side of cameras. So if one of the other ones is other ones that did well are don't put an SD card in your Canon 5D Mark III because they'll slow it way down. Or a rare look inside of the behind the scenes of the Olympics was another one. So I look at what works and what doesn't work, and I try to use that as a springboard later on to post stuff that people want to see. I also put in here a comment that says monitor comments. So one of the things I used to do is I let people comment on the blog without being monitored. It's a really bad idea. If you write a blog, turn on the fact that you monitor them. There's a lot of spam that'll come through on the blog and no relevance at all to photography. I get the craziest comments like, hey, check out plumbing and Manchester, wherever, it's like, what? So I delete all that or mark it as spam. So I review each comment and then post those. Okay, social media tools. There's a bunch of them out there, and I find I didn't used to use them. I started using them a while back, maybe 6 months ago, and I'm using Buffer. But there's Hootsuite, Buffer, Sprout Social, If Then Then That, Social Flow, TweetDeck. There's just a ton of different social media tools. Here's the problem. I looked at Hootsuite, and it was this interface that's kind of cool, but also kind of convoluted. I wanted something that was super, super easy. I found Buffer, free service, which is cool, and I can post now to all social media from Buffer, and it posts to all of them for me, which is really, really cool. I can go to all platforms at one time. The only platform you have to kind of make a separate extra effort on is Instagram because you have to post from a mobile device. So what it does is it posts to Facebook, Twitter, Google+, LinkedIn, and then what it does is it pops up on my phone and says, you have a Buffer post, and it opens up Instagram for you, and then you have to manually copy and paste. It already copies the text and you just paste it in and post. Bit of a pain, but it's still better than having to go to 5 different sites and copy and paste and reload images and all that. So for me, for the Olympics, which is what 120 days from now, so when I get to Korea, I will be using this predominantly to post everything, and it will save me a lot of time. So I do like it for that. Again, it's free. I think you can only link 6 different social media sites to it. You can do up to 15 if you pay, but again, I'm only using 5. The one pain is if I turn on Twitter as one of those that I'm opposed to, I'm now limited to 140 characters. Really hate that. But I want things to go to Twitter, so I usually do 140 characters, post it, and then I'll go into Facebook and Instagram, and I will add on the metadata of how I shot it, which is a little bit extra work. I might just turn off Twitter, and then I can post whatever I want. The other cool thing about Buffer is it gives me cross analytics. So as opposed to Facebook, which says, hey, this one got this many views, or Instagram, this one got this many views, it actually tells me at the bottom, across all social media platforms, here's how I did, which is kind of cool. The other thing is it lets me schedule for future posts. So I can go to Buffer, I can put in a picture of all of us here today, and I can say, on Thursday at 10 a.m., post this. And it will schedule it and post it for me. So as someone who, if I'm traveling in Africa and I want to maybe have some posts while I'm there and I don't trust that I'll have good internet, I could actually schedule posts to go out. The only challenge with that is, again, Instagram's gonna come in on my phone, I'll have to post it separately. But pretty cool, and a big time saver. All right, measuring influence. There is real and there's fake likes. And so I get emails probably once a week from companies that says, hey, we see that you have a large following on social media, we can get it larger. And then I even pinged a couple of them back, like, well, how do you do that? So what they do on Instagram is they go out and they like 50 people per day, because what's the right thing to do when you like? Oh, I'll follow you back. And then 3 days later, they unlike everybody. And every day they like 50 more people and unlike those same 50 3 days later, hoping to get you followers. To me, that's not real. And so you'll see people have these massive following. You have to wonder, is it real or not? I'm not saying they're not all real, but a lot of times you can purchase them. So be careful with that. And the other thing that's more important to me than anything is I don't really care about followers, I care about engagement. I've seen companies that have 1.7 million followers and they post something on their page and they get 18 likes. Well, that's really not very impressive. So having people write comments or like an image is really more important than the number of how many people are following you. And it used to be that if you wanted to get sponsored in this business, and I went to Canon or whoever and said, hey, I'm relevant because I got 50,000 followers. And they might go, ooh, that's cool. But now, if they're smart, they're gonna be like, I don't really care how many followers you have. Are they engaged? Do they care? Are they listening to you? Right? If all of you are in this room asleep and only one of you is awake, might be you, then it's not very relevant, right? If everybody's listening, then it's different. So this is one of the things with social media is, are people even listening? So one of the things I'll do when I look at other photographers or businesses, and I'll say like, oh wow, they have a lot of people who are following, and then I'll go straight down to their posts and see what kind of interaction they're getting. Okay, and don't just share on social media. This is interesting, and one of the reasons I asked BayPhoto to sponsor this presentation is, on social media, we're very digitally centric, right? A lot of my clients want to buy digital images of what I shot. We post to social media. I have all kinds of people that say to me, how many megapixels do we need in our cameras today? And you know what I usually say to them? How many megapixels does the average person need that's using them today? Well, most people are posting to social media. It's probably not even 1 megapixel. So, but people are posting nonstop to social media. We're taking more pictures per day than we're taking the first 50 years of photography. But we're not printing enough. So I love to print at home and frame and put them up on the wall. I like to print for my clients. So the bat mitzvah I shot on Saturday, I printed, matted, and framed the picture for them, and I drove it to their house Sunday morning as a gift. I love printed medium. So BayPhoto, they make great metal prints. I just produced a bunch of metal prints for a client this week, and they're awesome. And albums and books. Like when I come back from Africa. My wife, who does all my album design for me, because she's the talented one in the family, she'll design a book. So we have on our family room a bunch of books from each of our trips. So printing is a really good thing. We don't want to forget about that, because it's very easy to post something on social media and then you kind of forget about it, whereas having it printed, really good thing. And Bayphoto, I will say the reason I use Bayphoto is they've been absolutely bulletproof. Their quality is exceptional. The turnaround time, even the way they pack, I know this sounds really silly, but the way they pack their stuff is perfect. Like, never had a damaged print or anything from them. So. All right, what works and what doesn't work on social media? You sometimes just don't know what's going to resonate with people. And I'm as confused by anybody on this, and I'm going to show you some images in a minute that did really well on social media, and I was surprised by. But I find that colorful images do better. That's not surprising. If you put, I mean, it's not to say black and white can't do well, but generally things that kind of pop and show up amongst all the other images that people are scrolling through tend to do better. Current relevance, during the eclipse, I took pictures of the eclipse and I composited all of the shots of the sun in the different phases of the eclipse, and that had massive, I think 49,000 people saw that, because people were looking for eclipse photos. It was top of mind to the whole US at that point. And I mentioned the links with URLs don't reach as many people, so you want to think about that. So I want to show you a couple shots. This is probably the most surprising one. I just happened to shoot this by the Golden Gate Bridge. There was a sailboat coming into the frame, and I shot it, and I thought it was kind of cool having the boat there. I almost didn't post this to social media because I'm like, I don't know if it's strong enough. You know, it was okay. This had over 1,000 likes. People love this photo. People were writing me and saying, I want this framed. I want this on my house. I'm like, really? And again, it's a subjective matter, right? Photography is subjective. We don't know what's going to, I may love something and you might hate it, or vice versa. I look at some covers of photo magazines that say photo of the year, and I'm like, oh, I would have deleted that. Subjective. So you don't always know what's going to work. This one worked. I didn't think it would. This one here, I kind of knew it would work because it's very colorful. It's a cool animal. I love the eyes of the red-eyed frogs. This is, again, from Costa Rica a couple weeks ago. And I kind of figured it would do well, and it did. This one here, again, from Costa Rica, it happened to be a rainy day. I'm like, should we even go out and shoot? Let's do it. And the hawk shook off the water. And I think they realize that there's that split-second moment when that happens. And they're like, that is cool, and it's different. It's not just a hawk on a tree branch. It's the shaking of the water, I think, that actually got people to like that. And this one did really, really well. This is from Tanzania on the last trip, and this is a motion pan. And I think this is because I've got a lot of photographers who follow me, and they realize that shooting a zebra at 30th of a second with a 600 millimeter lens handheld was difficult, and maybe that's why. But this shot has had a lot of people talk about it, and I kind of expected, I was hoping this would do well because it was a tough shot to get. But again, sometimes you can guess that it might do well and it won't. Or you might guess it's going to do well and it does, or you think it's not going to do that great and it does. So it's hit and miss. And this is one of the things about social media is you kind of have to test it and play with it and see. And everybody's following might be different. If you're a black and white photographer, people are going to probably be drawn to your black and white photos. As I mentioned, this is the upcoming photo tours. So we have a whole bunch. I'm back here in New York for Photo Plus, and we're doing, I think, an Ellis Island behind the scenes of the abandoned hospital. We're waiting for final clearance on that now. Costa Rica in November, and we got 4 spots open for that. Japan just got announced for, is that right? November? No, that's not right. It's not November this year. Sorry about that. That's 18. My mistake. Namibia, Botswana, Costa Rica again in August, Croatia, Slovenia, Tanzania, we're doing reverse migration. That one's already sold out, but we're doing a second one in February. So we have a January and a February for Tanzania. And then actually the migration itself in August, which is the other direction by the water holes. So a lot going on. And again, the cool thing about this is, for me, a lot of content for social media and the blog. So, and we have a lot of fun when we're out there traveling, right? Say yes.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
There you go. Thank you, Carol. And so this is how you get a hold of me. I mentioned I do answer every email. It's just jcable@jeffcable.com. Facebook and Instagram were the ones I use the most, Jeff Cable Photography. The blog, for those of you who are not reading it right now, it's just blog.jeffcable.com. And that is my website, which is jeffcable.com. So, wow, all right, a lot to thanks.